producer extraordinaire, Pam Barnes. All right, so now I'm going to go to the things that you're best known for. Hey Hey It's Saturday. When were you producer?
I think it was 1990 to 1999 when it finished. Yeah, so the last 19 years, yeah. Before that, I had done Red Faces when I was working part-time on it.
I didn't know that about Red Faces. Tell us about that.
It was just, travelling around the country looking at unusual people doing unusual things and trying to work out what would be entertaining to put on the show.
So you did that prior to Jack Strong?
Yes, correct. Yeah. When Gavin Disney left, I was asked to produce the show by Ernie and Daryl. So I said, thank you very much. And I obviously worked on it full time. And that's, the rest is history, as it were. It was great times. Previously, a lot of it had been sort of pre-recorded on a Friday, but we sort of went, no, let's just go live on a Saturday because it was live is best. And, occasionally we would pre-record if there was some, huge artist that was only available on the Friday or something like that. But we were very lucky. The show was loved by everybody, and it was a warts and all. Anything can happen. Pluck a duck and go berserk. God knows what John Blackman saying, all sorts of silly things. It was great fun. Great fun.
And you speak about the team. When did you first meet Ernie Carroll, aka Ozzy?
Well, that goes right back to the very beginning of me at Channel 9. When I first met Ernie Carroll was when I was hired temporary for a month at Channel 9 to work on the live commercials and things. And I was put in an office that was sort of, there was like three offices off each other. I was in one, the man I was supposedly working for was in another, and Ernie and Freddie Parsons were in the other two offices. And Ernie very nicely asked me to, join him for a cup of tea in the afternoons after the production meetings and things. And then as years went on, we had it every day. We would have a cup of tea and a bun. We called it the Bun Club. And there would be Ernie, Rosemary Margan, and a guy called Dick Casey who worked for 3AK in sales. And we had the Bun Club, and we had it every afternoon. It was beautiful. He was the most gorgeous man. Love him.
Myself and a lot of other people know Ernie as Ozzy, but he was a powerhouse of television.
Oh, he was. He was Mr. Wise. He was so wise and so just a beautiful, beautiful man who, knew how to approach and handle everything, and in a very calm and beautiful way. He was my inspiration to, handle things the way he did, because everyone respected him. He always knew how to fix things, fix people who were getting a little bit overexcited or something. Yeah. He was very wise.
So Ernie was a creative, a writer, a producer?
Yes, he was, yeah. When I first started there, he was also doing Cartoon Corner with Daryl.
How was the team to work with?
Oh, they were great. Ernie as Ozzy, then you had Red and Wilbur, Russell Gilbert, Molly, Andrew Fife, and the musical director, Daryl McKenzie, and all of those people. It was just wonderful.
And Livo and
yes,
Jo Beth Taylor.
Yes, yeah.
Jackie, of course.
Denise Drysdale, of course.
Tell us the biggest successes you remember from Hey Hey.
I guess the biggest success was being taking the show to Hollywood. So somehow we negotiated our way to do 2 shows at Warner Brothers Studios, and we got there, and it was sort of, I guess in a way we sort of thought we'd be able to just, knock on every show's door and sort of say, oh, would you like to come on this show, but that wasn't the case. We had a woman called Dory Glazer, who was an American, and she was very well connected in Hollywood. So she did a lot of liaison for us to get guests for the show. But it was very hard because we had to also, follow the format and find red faces acts. And
yes,
of course, no one knew the show, let alone red faces or what that was all about. So we went to a place called Venice Beach, which most people would know about, and sort of this strip of beach, and all of these people sort of on it. We were, muscle building and juggling and doing all sorts of things. And if I thought they were vaguely entertaining, I would sort of go up to them saying, "Oh, excuse me, I'm working, for this show in Australia. Would you like to be on this in this segment called Red Faces?" And I think we paid people very little, as is the case on that show, including me. And anyway, so we pulled all the people together. I think they didn't actually know. Still to this day, they're probably still wondering what happened to them when they sort of got in there, and there was Red with his gong banging people saying "get off," and it's sort of, oh, is that what? I didn't know that was going to happen. It was funny. Also, we really had a lot of difficulty getting enough guests for the show, and I literally was running around the lot and accosting people who look vaguely famous and asking them if they'd like to come on the show. We're just doing it down there. You pop in and be a guest, and oh God help me. Somehow we filled 2-hour shows. It was fun.
Yes, memorably you had Corky on it and Chevy Chase.
Oh, Corky, yes, and Chevy Chase. Corky was the best. She was the wheel girl, and she was literally sort of, there's a very funny bit with her sort of just going, "Where am I? What am I doing here?" Because she could not work it out because there's pluck a duck, and it was just really, it's wild.
That's right. You did take the show on the road a lot, and it must have been interesting when you turned up with a head on a stick and an ostrich puppet. You also memorably did Disney.
Well, that's right. The most challenging with the cast explaining it was we went and did 2 shows from Walt Disney World. So there was negotiations going on for a couple of years, and we had a phone meeting at once every couple of months to talk to these people in Orlando about hey and all the rest. So we went over and we went on a survey trip. It was wonderful. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. It really is quite astounding, Walt Disney World. It's huge and it's fabulous. So we went on all these rides and we did all these things, and we said, yes, we'd like to do that, and we'd like to film there, and we'd like to do that. So we had a person facilitating all of that for us. And then we, went back to Australia, and we worked out all the bits we wanted to film and where we wanted to film them, and on it went. But when we actually got there, the people that we'd sort of seen before didn't quite seem to be the same people that were there looking after us now. So I can remember being called to a meeting at Walt Disney World. I can still see it. And we're sort of this whole table of people sort of sitting around it going, "Okay, so tell us about your show." And I sort of go, "Oh, okay." So it's hosted by a guy called Daryl Summers. The co-host is a pink ostrich, and someone puts his hand inside the ostrich and sort of works the mouth. And then we have a head on a stick called Dickie Knee, and he lies in front of the desk, and when somebody talks from a place far away but can see what's going on in the show, when he speaks, you have to put the head on a stick up and do that. And then we have a big life-size duck called Pluck a Duck. Well, you could see the faces on these people at Walt Disney World. They had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, and they were shocked, because they've got Mickey and Minnie and, all of those people, and Donald Duck. They didn't want to bloody Pluckaduck anywhere near it. And it was like, it was quite something to have to talk my way in and out of that. And of course, I was the advanced party. There's no one else there to help me. I was there going, oh, well, let's make this happen.
Yeah, it would have sounded like a fever dream, like your medication from the flight.
Yeah. The other thing that I will never forget was Crystal, who used to be in charge of all our props, which people in the industry would know.
Everyone knows Crystal.
Yes. He had to send over all these props that we needed for the comedy sketches and things like that. And then in the end, he just thought, I'll just throw in that in case they need it and throw in that in case they need it. What none of us knew about was, because it was also being sponsored by Qantas were on board. And so we thought that, well, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't my job to be in charge of sending trunks of things, but whoever was doing it sort of obviously thought you just take it somewhere and you send it and it lands where you want it and they deliver it. Anyway, I was there alone ahead of time, and I got a call from customs in Orlando, sort of asking me to come on down and sort of identify what was in this trunk. And I got there, and it was boiling hot, and it was this sort of half outside, half inside sort of warehouse sort of thing. And I got there, and they'd put everything out, and everything was there. There was a kangaroo skin, and all of these things that had been, sort of suggested that we might need, plus ice Vovo biscuits and all of these other things that Crystal had thrown in for good measure, thinking we might come in handy for anything we're doing. So I'm sort of standing there with these these two burly gentlemen trying to identify and justify everything that was in the case. By the time Daryl and everybody else arrived, like a week and a half later or something, I was in a foul mood. I felt like I was thrown to the dogs. It was really quite something. Anyway.
Absolutely. And that custom stuff wouldn't fly with America now.
Oh, God, no. Can you imagine? I mean, I didn't even know the word carnet, but, I know it now. You're meant to have a document called a carnet, and that tells every single thing that's in the trunk. We had nothing, just a bunch of stuff in the trunk.
Well, may I talk about the rundown, which is several pieces of paper that people conduct a television show from?
Yes.
Hey Hayes was famously 2 pages for 2 hours of live TV.
Yes. It was based on the format that had been from there for Graham Kennedy's IMT and the Don Lane show. It's all I ever knew. And somehow, we got through it. So it would have the show number and the date on the top, and then it would have, opening remarks, and then it would have opening guest, opening act and commercial break, and then, the rest of the show. But everything was just, stating the obvious, what it was, and stand-up comedy. It would be, Dave Hughes or, there's a comedy spot or something. But there was no sort of timing on it or anything. I would just have that in my head. I'd sort of know, I'll allow 5 minutes for that. And I also had work it out with the DA on the day what we would allow time for. And if it got sort of like it all blew out on page 1 because we were all having sort of too much fun, then I had something in the back of the bus, in the second page of the rundown that I could drop and manipulate the rundown and the commercial breaks and, make sure that everybody, that all still worked, and we got all the commercial breaks in and everyone had a good time.
Apart from the acts which were locked in, it really was seat of the pants.
Yes, it really was. And we had sort of things like, celebrity head, which was people sitting there with the name on their head, and they had to sort of guess who they were. So of course you never knew what was going to come out of anybody's mouth, what they were going to guessing we couldn't go back and edit it. We'd just have to deal with, whatever they said to, hilarious consequences sometimes. It was great. We had lots of regular segments that were there for everyone to have fun. There was, funny photos. I always used to, people used to send them in, and I would choose the ones that I thought would be the best laugh, and try and get some sneaky ones in that, might be a little bit provocative or something. And then, Andrew Fife would have a look at them, and he'd draw little cartoons for them, and we got away with a bit there.
Yes, I remember even with funny photos, the camera work on them, they were comedy reveals.
Yes. Lucky Phil on camera. Yeah. Everyone knew their job. Everyone was great. It was great to work there because there was so much trust and professionalism from everyone, and just had to, the director, as just had to go with what was happening, and that was the joy of the show. It just sort of unfolded.
And it was an amazing show. So it was famously the place for music acts to appear and get exposure.
Yes.
Things have changed dramatically now, and it seems there are very few opportunities on free-to-air for music acts to appear.
Oh, very few. I mean, we were so lucky that everyone who came to Australia basically made sure that there was a visit to Hey Hey. There were lots of promotional trips in those days, in the early days, lots of promotional trips to sort of, they'd perform their, latest hit. And if that sort of all went well, it would sell out by Monday. And then they would book a tour, further down the track. We're so lucky that, we were on everybody's, knock list, let's go to Hey Hey and see if we can get them on there. And then other things would have to sort of go after them, sort of thing.
Well, the tide has turned so much now that a lot of the acts have to pay to appear on a show.
Well, where do they perform now? Oh, God, there was none of that. I mean, we paid them. The only fee it was ever on Hey Hey pretty well was $500. Well, it didn't matter who you were. That was, and, very rarely there would be, I don't remember we paid people because we were giving them,
that very elusive thing called exposure.
Exposure, promotion, yes.
Well, yes, as you say, now really there's only the morning shows, and thankfully Spicks and Specks have brought back music.
That's great. That's really good to hear.
Music has changed dramatically on free-to-air.
Mm.
Comedy has changed dramatically in the past decades. So much of what we did will not be deemed as acceptable today. Some for good reason. What are your thoughts on comedy then versus comedy now?
Oh, I prefer the then, I have to say. It felt like everyone was free. There was, I go back to Trust. We used to have a comedian on every show. It was sort of part of the format. And, I would ask for a script, and I would ask what they were going to talk about, and they never ever rehearsed what they actually did. So it was all back to trust. You have to make sure it was appealing for the entire audience, which was, lots of kids and lots of mums and dads and grandmas and grandpas and all points in between. Comedy now is so different. Everything's so politically correct. Everyone's can jump on things and, sort of get on Mr. Google and Instagram and, all of that, and sort of poo-hoo people and the cancel culture and all that. I just can't stand it. I think that we were very lucky to have the freedom to just be entertaining. And I feel for people now. It's very different. I reckon the closest we get to, really having a good laugh and off the cuff is, have you been paying attention, shows like that, because they can just be themselves and they're reacting to, what someone else is saying and that sort of thing. I prefer that sort of comedy.
They can do what they want really on that show, and maybe Ricky Gervais, but generally.
Well, it's just not the same opportunities, are there? There's hardly an opportunity for people to do stand-up unless it's a comedy gala or, something like that. There's very few places these days for people to ply their craft.
I will ask you about something else that you're very well known for, the Circle. How did it come about and what was it?
Well, the Circle was a morning show, and Stephen Tate from Channel 10 asked me to, create a morning show. Well, certainly morning shows were not breaking the anything. They were been around forever, and there's unfortunately you have to have the advertorials with it because that pays the bills. But I think what we came up with was a very different show, because most of the others are sort of a man and a woman and blah 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 and a bit of a desk. We had a thing called the Circle, and we had a semicircle couch and 4 fabulous women who really didn't know each other until they were actually doing the show, because we did some auditions. I remember I flew to Sydney with Chrissy Swan, and we met Yumi and a few other people. I can't even remember who they were. And then we decided on Georgie Coughlin, Chrissy Swan, Yumi Steins, and Denise Drysdale. So they all, they met at the photo shoot. Talking about taking your life in your hands. But it was great. Before that, there was GMA with Bert, and then there was 9am, and then this new show called The Circle with all the girls, and it was very successful. It was fun. We ended up even winning a Logie for the most entertaining program. It's like, oh my God, a morning show. But they were so much fun. We had such amazing feedback from the viewers. Every day we were just flooded with people sort of saying how much they loved the girls and how funny it was and how they just loved it. And people had been sort of, home and not being able to go out, and that all of a sudden they had some fun in their lives. It was amazing. It was great. It was great reaction.
Like you say, and a major part of the appeal was the female focus, but it was still inclusive.
Yes. And we had guest hosts, and we had Colin Lane as a regular guest host, and he was funny as. And, we just had a really good, it's a very good bunch of people. And we had some amazing acts on it, and that was very live. Yes, absolutely was. And it was in the mornings, and it went for hours. We had cooking scenes, so MasterChef had just sort of begun at about the same time. So we had lots of wonderful, chefs and people on, and and we always used to sit round and sort of eat at the end of the show. It was great. I'm proud of that one.
As you should be. And it was 5 days a week, and anyone who's worked on such a show understands the effort involved.
Oh, yes, yeah. And another fly by the seat of your pants job, really, because there was no time for rehearsals. Nothing ever got rehearsed.
So the Circle was controversially axed. Why do you think it was not renewed?
Oh, I wish I knew the answer to that, but I think it was mainly Sydney wanted to, that's where the power base was, and I think they wanted to have everything come out of Sydney. So they said goodbye to Melbourne, and then they bizarrely sort of started their own show up a few months later in Sydney. Go figure.
Quite similar.
Yeah, quite similar. Yes, quite similar people. It was just like, anyway, moving on.
Well, let's talk about another thing that you're very well known for, Family Feud. It's been through many incarnations around the world. You had to stick to a format. What do you think makes it work?
Oh, I think it's an excellent format. The appeal of it is that, you have to say the first thing that comes into your head. But it's also, you've got the backup of being pre-recorded, so you can sort of get around that. You can get around that. It can all come out in the edit. But the questions are the key. The questions got to be something that will just open up people's minds to almost anything. And of course, it doesn't have to be exactly what they say. If somebody sort of said gives an answer, you can pretty well look at the responses and sort of say, oh, that's same, but we'll give them that, and then whatever would be revealed on the board, and people could see, oh yes, that wasn't exactly the same, but it meant that. It was loose in terms of there's time enough for the host to get to know the contestants and just have fun with them. And both Bert and Grant were very good at talking to people and getting the best out of people in just a few sentences, really.
As you mentioned, you were the executive producer of the previous incarnation, Bert's Family Feud, featuring Bert Newton.
Yes.
Did you have to make any concessions for a master ad-libber?
Not. I think Bert was probably more rehearsed in his head than Grant ever was. Both of them, we would give them information about the families, and whoever was the writer would go and talk to the families, and probably get something out of them, give to the host, ask them about this, and get some information out of them, and have some fun with them. Mark McCall Jones was working on it with Bert, and had a couple of different people working with Grant, but Grant's absolute. They're both masters of improv. They were just amazing.
Yes, and Grant is now king of the game shows. He has so much energy and is totally relatable. And
he makes everything fun. He's so lovely to work. He's beautiful with the crews. Everyone adores him. It's really, I'm so thrilled that he's still working. Yep. I'm so thrilled.
He is a lovely man.
No, it's beautiful. It's a very nice man. Yeah.
During your run with Grant, they moved the actual production from Melbourne to Sydney. What did that entail?
Yeah. There's another stroke of genius. Well, it meant we have to, reinvent the set, make a whole new set for a different size studio in Sydney. And then we had to all fly backwards and forwards every fortnight. And sort of we had two record days where we'd do, 10 shows, and then we'd all sort of come back and edit them and send them back to Sydney.
So the production base was all in Melbourne?
Production base was Melbourne, yeah. So it made no sense to then record it in Sydney, in my humble opinion, but I wasn't the person who was making the financial decisions.
Did you have any interesting contestants that you remember?
We had lots of interesting contestants. They were, they only ever made the cut if they were interesting. The boring ones never sort of got the call back, really. Episode 1 with Grant Denyer. First question: name a yellow fruit. Orange. So everyone just completely and utterly fell over laughing, and it was a great promo for a long time to come.
And that's what you want.
It was always in the highlight reels. Yes, exactly.
Well, you mentioned it's edited, so there was safety net. You now see on social media quite a few of those things that didn't make it.
Yes, which I always enjoy, those behind the scenes disasters. I'm sure you do. Yes.
You've been so generous with your time. I was just going to mention in closing that you've won Logies. You recently won the Screen Producers Lifetime Achievement Award.
I did. I'm so thrilled to be considered for that. It was just an amazing thing to be presented with. I'm still, to this day, quite working out how that happened, but I'm very thrilled that my many years in the business were recognised. So very happy with that.
Thoroughly deserved, Pam.
That's very kind, John.
Thank you again for the most entertaining chat.
My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course, a huge thanks to Pam Barnes. We'll have someone very interesting again next time. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you then. Bye.